Hello, everybody. How's everyone doing? And well, this is the Melvin Live Show, and hope everyone is doing well. I am actually quite excited about today because what I wanted to do today was initially I wanted to share with you a framework, a flywheel that I have been looking at in terms of how you could automate your business itself. But today I wanted to take a slight detour and I wanted to share with you something else, something that I just came across today during a session with a group of middle managers of an organization. And so I want to bring this to you because I think it is so important a message that you have to hear this, especially for those of you who are looking at building this 1% 1 million all digital business. So let me set a context here. The story here is about this bridge in Honduras. And in Honduras itself, that apparently that region it's faces a lot of hurricanes and strong winds. And so one of the places that that were subjected to this strong winds, the government decided to build a bridge to kind of allow people to cross the river. And so they got this group of engineers from Japan. In fact, it's one of the top 10 biggest construction company in Japan to build this bridge. So the engineers came and they measured and they do all that stuff and they built that bridge itself. Now the year that the bridge was commissioned, actually an hurricane hit Honduras, and large part of the city's other bridges, roads were all decimated. It was all destroyed, and it was so bad that many of the roads that used to be there was like totally disappeared. However, this bridge, right? It's called the Bridge of the Rising Sun. This bridge suffered just minor damages and it stood still. And everyone was upset. You know why? The reason is because the bridge ended up like this. And let me show you what I mean by that. The bridge ended up like this. And so, as you can see from this picture here, this bridge was supposed to allow people to cross from one side of the river to the other side of the river. But because of the hurricane and this whole movement, the river that you see there actually changed its course. And so it went from, underneath that bridge to on the right side or left side, depending on which way you're looking at it. But from the picture itself, it has moved to the right side of the bridge. And right now, the bridge runs across a piece of dry land. And so it became known as the bridge to nowhere because, people, it wasn't going to take anybody anywhere itself, right? And so this was the story that I heard today as I was facilitating a session for middle managers of an organization. And we use this as a metaphor. The metaphor that we used for this was essentially the idea that, you know, at the end of the day, sometimes we are kind of fixated on built to last, right? They wanted a bridge that was built to last. They wanted the bridge to be able to withstand the strong winds, which it did, withstand the hurricane, which it did, and still stay where it is, which was amazing. I mean, by all engineering feat, this construction of this bridge was amazing. However, after the river changed its course, this bridge became absolutely redundant. And, from the look of the picture itself, you can imagine that it looks like an eyesore. So the lessons that we can learn from this, I believe it's really, really important. So if you think about disruption, right? Many people thought that 10 years ago, for example, people thought that when you travel and you want to stay at a place, you would default to a hotel. And when you want some level of personalized or private transportation, you default to a taxi. And if you were a professional 10, 15 years ago, and you need to rely on email to do your work and to be able to give you real-time data, real-time notification about emails that are coming in, you would default to a BlackBerry. But look at what happened right now. Of course, one would argue that because of the pandemic, Airbnb is taking a beating, but that's besides the point. The point is that for the longest time, people have accepted the fact that by default, when you travel, you stay in a hotel. By default, if you want personalized or private transportation, you default to a taxi. By by the virtual fact that you are a professional who rely on the instantaneous delivery of email, you default to a BlackBerry. But look at what happened these days. When we travel, and in fact, the hotel industry has been taken a beating by Airbnb. The taxi industry has been disrupted by Uber, and in our case here in Singapore by Grab. And of course, where is BlackBerry now, right? And so the key idea behind that is that for the longest time, we have upheld a certain level of assumption, an assumption that this to be true, right? So in the example of the Honduras bridge, the engineers assume, and I guess it was a fair assumption, right? I mean, how often does a river change its course? So the engineers assume that the river is going to be there. And by virtue effect of that assumption itself, they then use their expertise to build a bridge that was able to withstand the strong winds and the hurricane. But little did they know that that very assumption itself will be proof to be invalid, right? The fact that it is the river is going to change its course is just something that was unfathomable at the point in time of the construction. And so if you look at what's going on right now, essentially, right? I mean, we have kind of assumed that when you think about training, when you think about personal or professional development, you think about training. And by training, you think of it as an event, that it is a place that you go to, it is a certain time and a certain date that you put aside and you go to a place to attend a training, or you go to a place to attend a webinar, or you go to a place to attend a workshop, for example, right? And so that was the idea of training for most of us. Now, of course, with COVID, that has upended the entire training industry. And I would be first to tell you that we're not going to see training go back to its good old days of face to face. I mean, we will have to look at a new and better way of training. Besides, these days, people are going to say, for example, I mean, in the medium to short to medium term itself, I do not see people taking the time to travel across, somewhere across the world just to attend a training itself, where it can be done remotely, virtually, in a manner that it could be just as effective, if not even more so, for for that particular training itself. So number one, it's let's not see training as an event anymore. Training needs to evolve, and training, the way that we know it, is we need to be able to adapt to the lifestyle, to the thinking, to the circumstance of the professionals that we are serving. So, for example, right now, everyone is going through so much changes. And with all these changes itself, people think that I need to acquire the skills. I need to acquire the skills to be able to do this and this and this. For example, just last week, I was conducting a training for a group of training and development professionals, and they were looking at how we could leverage tools like Zoom, Teams, WebEx, as well as Adobe Connect as a relevant tool to facilitate virtual learning for their employees. And I think one of the thing that I made it abundantly clear to them was that it isn't we our training, the way that we deliver the training shouldn't be dictated by the technology itself. Because for the longest time, people has been saying that technology is just an enabler. And now this is even more pronounced. So the whole idea behind this really is that you want to be able to use technology, but you also want to know how your training can adapt and be flexible enough to meet the needs of your professionals. So if you think about what's a professional going through these days, right? They would be working remotely to a certain extent. They will also be needed to jumpstart their technical training in the area that is relevant to their job itself. So asking them to come for additional training, it might not be as efficient or as effective as you would like it to be. And so the premise behind this really is that we have to look at adapting training to the people that we want to serve, to the people that we want to help, but rather than say that, well, this is how it is and you should come to us. So that's one aspect of it. Now, the other aspect of it really is that if you look at professional development has been just like earlier I said that, for the longest time we've been talking about technology as an enabler. And it's true because right now in this COVID pandemic itself, we are saying that a lot of people are embracing technology not because they want to, but because they have to. It's out of necessity. And the fact is that many of them are just using technology as an enabler. In other words, I couldn't meet with you face to face, so I'm using Zoom or its equivalent to substitute that face to face meeting. So we're just using technology as an enabler. But what we really need to think about is using technology as an integrator. So what do I mean by that? Now, the way to look at training is that how do we get our professionals to be trained and to be equipped effectively in terms of the skill set, mindset, and tool set that they need to have in order to help them succeed in their work itself. So that's one key question. The other key question is that we have to bear in mind the reason and the purpose why professionals want to attend any form of training, right? And they do that not because of the content, they do that because there is a problem that they want to solve. And what we need to do is to be able to help them solve those problems itself. So giving them too much theoretical stuff and that, it may be something that is helpful, but it may be something that they could consume on their own. What they should focus on most on that during the session itself, it's more hands-on, more interactive, more questions, more try and error, more experimentation, more implementation. It's more about, okay, from this, how do I get there? So if you think about it, it's not so much the cognitive part, right? In fact, it's not even so much about the part of coalescence. It's actually the part about being able to experiment and being able to implement it for themselves. So, what's the message here today? The message here today from the learning from the Honduras Bridge is the following. True, in that case, this may not be applicable to them. But for us who are looking at building this one person, 1 million, all digital, especially the all digital part, what we really need to do is not to focus on build to last. What we really need to focus on is build to adapt. And so by building to adapt, the key thing is we must have that characteristic or that element of what we call intelligent opportunism. And by intelligent opportunism, it means that while we pursue the strategy that we have laid out for our business itself, we need to keep an open mind and still look out for opportunities that emerges. And as this opportunity emerges, we must be able to very quickly take advantage of it or to be able to leverage those opportunities to help us either pivot or grow significantly. So the question I have for you here today is how are you building your business to adapt to what's going on in the marketplace? Because as I said, as a one-person business itself, that ability to adapt is truly, truly crucial. And so, how are you doing that? Share it with me. Or if you have any questions relating to this topic itself, feel free to leave it in the comments. I read all the comments and I will read your comment and I will attempt to answer. And if there is a need to, I may even create a separate video just to answer that question itself. So feel free to drop me a comment and ask me the questions in the comments below. And so if you found this video to be useful, please go ahead and click the like button because that would help more people discover videos like this. And the other thing is if you want to understand and to watch me execute on the strategies of building this 1%, 1 million all digital business, then you have to subscribe to this channel itself, because where I am going to do it, I am going to be sharing all these strategies, ideas, and tools that I've used and I love. And with that, I thank you so much for watching. And once again, if you have got a question, leave it in the comments. If not, I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye bye.